The other big story, big game of the day yesterday, Logan, was Dallas versus Denver. National TV game. Really fun watch. And
Mm-hmm.
Kyrie ends up winning it with one of the more wild game winners that we've seen, Logan. Something that only the great Wally Jones could have pulled off. But even with the offhand, I don't know if Wally, who of course had a great hook shot as a small guard, but just absolutely absurd. What did Dallas prove to you in that win?
They proved that. I mean, I think Dallas is a real contender, man. One, I also want to say, I remember vividly, I was practicing right-handed floaters in the gym one day, and some dude told me to stop doing it because I would never use that in a game, and I just want to give
Yeah.
a big screw you to him,
Yeah.
pal.
No, fuck that guy. Yeah. Let's get him.
Kyrie just won it with a lefty floater, buddy. Go talk mess to somebody else. First, I want to give credit to
Yeah.
Denver for getting back in this game. Down 13 with like 6 to go. End up crawling back, man. That's what Denver does. Like, they're a machine, man. They're going to keep games tight. But I really think Dallas can get to the hole and kind of abuse Denver's interior, man. They beat Denver 62 to 38 in points in the paint. They out-rebound Denver 59 to 37 by 22. Dallas notched 21 offensive rebounds, and they beat Denver 21 to 6 in second chance points. And so you go, why? How did that happen? Well, consistently when you're running high pick and roll with Luka and Kyrie, the big man, Jokic, has to come out of the paint, has to respect Kyrie and Luka on pull-up jumpers and stuff, and it just takes him away from the basket, and it opens up opportunities for easy boards on the backside where guys like Gafford can really thrive. If it's Lively, if it's Gafford, if it's PJ, like all those guys have really good size. Again, PJ's a 4, but before the trade, they were 25th in rebounds per game. Last season, Dallas was the worst rebounding team in all of basketball. They were 30th in rebounds per game. It was a big component of why they didn't make the playoffs. They're 6th in rebounds per game since they acquired Gafford in Washington, since they made their debut for the team. Like, it's exactly what they needed at the trade deadline. You've got these two elite scorers of the basketball that are just going to carry your offense regardless. They're going to create great looks for other teammates. They're going to get their own. And I also want to say, man, dude, we give Wemby his flowers. Luka's absurd. And, like, I know that everybody knows that Luka's gnarly, but it just doesn't make any sense, man. He is completely unaffected by defensive pressure on the perimeter. And the way he weaponizes that shot, like the fact that he doesn't always pull it, but he's so good with a hand in his face that he can turn that into a pump fake and open up other stuff. It's ridiculous, man. I've never seen somebody shoot the amount of contested threes that Luka does and make them at such an easy clip. And like, not even like Steph's unique, and I don't want to take a shot at Steph. It's like Steph is so unique that his shot is so fast that most times defenders don't have a chance to put their hand up, right? And he's just so good at getting it off in a split second. Luka is slow, and it gives guys times to put their hand up, and it just doesn't matter, man. Like, Luka can just put it in the basket. And this is with a bad Jokic game, too. I think that's important. He goes 16, 11, and 7 on 6 of 16 shooting. So I don't think this is like something that, Dallas is going to consistently do to Denver, or, they figured out, they exposed Denver, they can do this. But they're unique in the sense that because they have these two guards that exert all this pressure and all those high pick and rolls with the center, Jokic has to come up. He can't leave them, because if he drops, that's just going to be food all day long. It's Luka and Kyrie filling it up. Now that Dallas has a legitimate glass advantage, man, I think Dallas can hang with anybody in the playoffs, dude. That's my takeaway, and that's how I felt before this game. But now that we see them knock off the defending champs and dominate on the glass like this, I think Dallas is a legit contender and can hang with anybody, man. I mean, Gafford and PJ were massive gets at the deadline. It's exactly what this team needed. I take Dallas as a legitimate contender regardless of where they are in the standings.
This was an impressive game for them, and I do like Dallas's postseason prospects as well. I do want to be clear. They don't have an advantage on the glass against Denver. They did in this game, but this was a weird Nuggets game, and it was particularly a very strange Jokic game. They also got a lot of long rebounds off of missed threes, and Jokic just wasn't playing with enough effort on the glass, like flat out. And there were a few balls that just bounced off their hands. Now, I got to give props to Dallas's perimeter athletes, especially for crashing the glass hard, for coming in quickly getting downhill and grabbing some boards because, yeah, their bigs, Gafford and Lively and PJ all did a good job, but it was also like Kyrie and Luka, all these guys are getting multiple offensive rebounds. And that 22-6 differential on the offensive glass, that's absurd, and it was ultimately the difference in this game. So there's no question that Dallas has meaningfully improved there. And that's part of why I loved this. You mentioned where they were in rebounds per game, but when you talk about rebound rate, what percentage of available rebounds are they grabbing? They were 29th before the Gafford trade, and they are 12th in rebound rate since. So that is just huge. Their ability to match up physically and on the glass has been transformed, and it gives them a much more serious playoff ceiling. I still think that Denver is better equipped there, though. I still think that Denver is the bigger team in the front court, the better rebounding team. But what this game showed us is that Dallas has outings where they can dominate in that category. And that was something that previously I wouldn't have said was possible. And again, they match up there now. I also thought they did a good job on Jokic. They were very pesky. Now, there were several pretty clear uncalled fouls on Jokic shot attempts in the first quarter. There's one where Lively obviously bumps him off the catch as he's going up into a shooting motion. Didn't get called. Lively pushed him in the back on another drive. Like, the young fella didn't quite have the discipline to be guarding Jokic, and yet he was being allowed a great deal of runway in terms of physicality. If they're not going to call it, though, I mean, that's like your best hope, honestly, is to just be super physical, to foul Jokic. It's like the same thing that people would have said about Steph off ball before, right? Just be extremely physical. Very different because Jokic is going to be stronger and more physical than you and probably win anyways. But if you can get away with fouling a guy, it's never going to hurt you in the short term in that matchup. But I do think that he's a very moody guy, and I think he was very frustrated by that in the officiating, and then he just became very passive as the game went along. So he didn't have his best touch, and he did become somewhat disengaged on both sides of the ball. Didn't assert himself at all in the clutch, and Jamal got good shots on those last couple possessions, but I would like to see Jokic touching the ball. I would like to see Jokic just getting to his spots because we know he can create such high probability looks. But I got to give him props. I mean, Lively, Gafford, both those guys were consistently fighting hard for positioning. The guards, especially early, swarmed him in a couple spots and forced turnovers. So they did well on Jokic, and I do not think they're a good defensive team at all, but I do think that they're improved there as opposed to where they were pre-deadline as well. And then my other takeaway from this game is just that Luka is one of two, maybe three dudes on the planet who can legitimately outplay Jokic in a playoff series. I think Jokic is clearly the best player on the planet. I know some people took this opportunity after just a bad, disengaged Jokic game to say, well, I think Luka might be better. And we always have these conversations about, is Luka the best player in the world? I, despite having loved Luka since he was a prospect, have never held that position because I do think that the way that Jokic dictates the game is so incredibly valuable. Like, we've talked about his ability to physically impose himself at a different level, and that is extremely valuable. But it's the overall efficiency, and it is just the fact that he empowers guys to play their brands of basketball. And it's not just, all right, well, I'm going to be dictating every single possession. It's, okay, from the middle of the floor, we're going to run a bunch of cutting actions. We're going to run handoffs. Like, we're going to do all these different things to get you guys involved. I think that that is ultimately more valuable. I think he empowers people to play their best basketball in a way that is very rare historically. And his efficiency as a scorer is just unmatched in the overall offensive efficiency that he leads to. But even though I think Jokic is definitely better than Luka, again, Luka is one of those dudes where it's like, okay, if you said over a 7-game series, hey, Luka actually got him, Luka outplayed him, I would believe it. It's Luka, it's Giannis, and maybe Embiid. I mean, Embiid has the talent. We would have to see it translate to the playoff stage. So that's a good formula, and that's kind of the formula that we've bought into with making the Mavs very dangerous. It's now they can match up more physically. Now they are more capable defensively. They have 2 star shot creators, and they have a top 3 player on the planet, and they have good spot up shooting overall. And they won this game even though they weren't shooting well because they secured all those extra possessions on the glass. So it was impressive. I do want to give props to the Nuggets defense though, because I think we talk so much about them as this all-time offense, and we can lose sight of how connected they are on that side of the ball and how difficult it is to really exploit mismatches, because Luka ate in this game. That's what he does. But it never felt like things were super easy for him. Like, KCP and Peyton Watson are both really good defensive guards, and they're both a little bit too small for Luka, so he was able to kind of bully those guys when he had those matchups, but they're still really good defenders. And then Jamal, he was trying to hunt down the stretch off of switches, and Jamal is still 6'4", and he's a stout guard, and like there's one possession in the crunch time where Luka tries to go at him, and he ends up having to settle for a tough turnaround, and he misses it. Like, Aaron Gordon guards him well, a big physical guy who can match up moves well. MPJ, I think, guards him decently well. So I do want to give props to Denver because that is a difference maker. It's not just that they're the best offense on the planet. It's that compared to a Dallas, they're a much better defensive team. And I do believe that it is harder to find guys to attack on their team. So good win for Dallas. I do think that they are one of a couple teams that it's like, yeah, they could push Denver. But, I mean, I certainly wouldn't pick it, and I still think it's highly unlikely. I still think they have too many issues defensively. I think Denver is just a more well-oiled machine offensively. I think they have more legit high-impact guys there, and I do think they have the best player in that series ultimately.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't predict it, but Dallas scares me unlike many other teams out west. I want to touch on one thing you mentioned. It is frustrating, and I know we beat this drum a lot when we talk about it. It does have to be frustrating as a player without any continuity across calls or anything, man. Like,
yeah.
I know it's...
Jokic is third in paint points per game, and I want to say he's 27th in free throw attempts per game. I just tweeted this stat out last week. But, like, consistently, he's engaged in, like, the most physical post-up battles in the league where he is going to be stronger than the other guys, so they are probably going to foul him, and a lot of it goes uncalled.
Yeah, and it's not even like... like we want less fouls or we want more fouls. It's not even like that, man. We just want it to be, we want continuity. We want, if it's called this game, it should be called this game. And there's a real lack of it. It makes it hard to watch as a fan too, especially like, and I don't want to be that guy either, man, but like, travel's not getting called, double dribbles. It's just like there's a lot more leniency with certain stuff. And the fact that different star players get a different whistle, man. It's like, Jokic is, and I don't know if it's like the top guy in your league that they choose to officiate differently. It reminds me of LeBron back when he was at his apex, and it's like, or even a couple years ago, it's like LeBron could go to the rack and get hacked, man, and nothing. And it's like, oh, it's because it's LeBron. Like, he's
I don't think it's about being the best player in the league. Yeah, I think it's about being just bigger and stronger than everybody.
And I think they should cut some leniency for guys who are like, if it's like a really small guard, obviously they're going to give him some slack because there's such a size difference. But it's like if he hacks him,
foul's a foul.
Exactly. If he hacks him, he hacks him, and it's just got to be frustrating for a guy like Jokic. This is routine now, man. It's like every game, and I know it's hard to bottle up your emotions and just get back on defense, and you can get frustrated with the refs. But I know it's got to be frustrating as a player to have to deal with this night in, night out, man. We just want continuity and. By the book, man. It's frustrating as a fan sometimes.
That is the one thing that's always been interesting to me about Giannis's whistle. I don't have a problem with it. I think that when Giannis gets free throws, it's because he's getting fouled. But I do think that he gets a benefit of the doubt there that LeBron never did. Like, both just these overwhelming downhill forces. And the way that they draw free throws is different than Jokic because Jokic is more often going to be on contact in and around the post as opposed to, hey, I've beaten you off the dribble and now your help defender is fouling me, or you're trailing and you foul me or whatever. But Giannis has always gotten those calls, and I have no problem with that. But just his free throw numbers year to year are much higher than anything that we ever saw from even LeBron, who is like up there for the greatest rim pressurer we've ever seen.